What if your voice could heal the wounds that destroy souls, but using it means losing everything you are? Chen thought she understood pain. As a music therapist, she'd spent years helping trauma victims find their voices again. But when shadows began moving in her office and a man with violet eyes stepped through darkness itself, she discovered that some wounds cut deeper than flesh. They slice through reality. Tonight, you'll witness a love story that spans dimensions. A woman who must choose between saving a dying realm and preserving her humanity. A cursed lord whose heart beats only in shadows, and a power so dangerous that gods themselves fear its song. This is the story of Chen, the last soul singer, and the impossible choice that will either heal the universe or tear it apart forever. If you're ready to feel every heartbeat, every betrayal, every kiss that could end worlds, hit subscribe and let the story begin. The digital clock blinked 11:47 p.m. when Chen finally stopped singing. Her voice still echoed through the music therapy room, a lullaby she'd learned from her grandmother. Words in a language she'd never been able to identify, but that always brought peace to her most troubled patients. Marcus, the war veteran who hadn't spoken in 3 months, was leaning back in his chair with his eyes closed, but there was something different about his breathing. For the first time, it seemed relieved. Maybe today it worked, Maya thought, putting away her guitar. Maybe he'll finally find the words. But when she turned to switch off the lights, Marcus opened his eyes, and they were glowing, not metaphorically. A silver light pulsed in his irises like liquid mercury, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like an impossible harmony of 3 people speaking at once. "Thank you," he whispered, and tears began streaming down his face. But they weren't normal tears. They shimmered like starlight, leaving trails of luminescence on his cheeks. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. This wasn't psychology. This wasn't therapy. This was something else entirely. The room suddenly felt charged, like the air before a thunderstorm, and the shadows in the corners seemed to be moving independently of any light source. "Marcus, I need you to stay calm while I call—" But her words were cut short by a voice that seemed to come from the darkness itself, rich and deep and devastatingly beautiful. "Finally," the voice said, and Maya felt it resonate in her chest like the lowest note of an organ. "I've found you, soul singer." The shadows gathered in the corner of the room, swirling and condensing until they took the shape of a man. He stepped forward, and Maya's breath caught in her throat. He was tall, at least 6'4", with black hair that seemed to absorb light and skin so pale it was almost luminescent. But it was his eyes that made her heart stop. Violet like amethyst, ancient like starlight, and filled with a pain so profound it made her own grief feel small. "Don't be afraid," the man said, though his very presence seemed to make the air itself tremble. His voice carried the weight of winter nights and distant storms, and when he moved, Maya noticed he cast no shadow, or perhaps he was made of shadow itself. "My name is Kael Nightwhisper, High Lord of the Shadow Court, and I've crossed between worlds to find you." He gestured to Marcus, whose silver tears were now flowing freely, but whose face had transformed from blank despair to something approaching peace. "What you just did, that wasn't music therapy. That was soul healing. You touched a place in him that no earthly medicine could reach." Maya's rational mind scrambled for explanations, hallucinations from working too late, some kind of shared psychotic episode, anything except the impossible reality standing before her. But her grandmother's voice whispered in her memory, stories dismissed as folklore about women in their family who could sing the pain away. "This isn't real," Maya whispered, backing toward the door. "People don't just appear from shadows. Magic doesn't exist. I help people with music, not whatever this is." Kael's expression softened, and for a moment the ancient pain in his eyes was joined by something gentler. "Your grandmother knew, didn't she? Elena Chen, though that wasn't her true name. She fled our world 60 years ago, carrying a secret that could save or destroy everything." He moved closer, and Maya caught his scent, cedar and rain and something wild like untamed forests. She was the last soul singer before you, Maya, and now my people are dying, and you're the only one who can save them. The rational part of Maya's mind was screaming that this was impossible, but something deeper, something that had always felt different about herself, about the way animals calmed when she hummed, about the way her voice could reach the most broken patients, was whispering that it all made terrible sense. Marcus stood up slowly, his eyes still shimmering with that silver light, and spoke in his normal voice for the first time in months. "Dr. Chen," he said, clear and strong, "I can remember my daughter's laugh again. Whatever this man is telling you about your gifts, it's true. I felt something heal inside me that I thought was gone forever." The moment Maya's fingers touched Kael's, the world dissolved. Not gently, like fading to sleep, but with the violent beauty of a storm breaking. She felt herself pulled through layers of reality, past colors that had no names and sounds that existed between notes. Her last glimpse of her office showed Marcus standing peacefully by the window, that silver light still glowing softly in his eyes, as if he were finally home in his own skin. When the chaos settled, Maya found herself in a place that made her heart ache with its terrible beauty. They stood on a balcony of black stone, carved with intricate patterns that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. Below stretched a city of impossible towers that twisted toward a sky painted in shades of deep purple and silver. Gardens of luminescent flowers wound between buildings like veins of light, and she could hear music, haunting wordless melodies that seemed to come from the very air itself. "Welcome to the Shadow Realm," Kael said, his voice carrying a note of pride mixed with profound sadness. This was once the most beautiful of all the Fey courts. As Maya watched, she began to notice what was wrong. The music was beautiful, but it was hollow, lacking the emotional resonance she'd learned to recognize in her work. The gardens glowed, but their light was cold, distant, and the few figures she could see moving through the streets below walked with the mechanical movements of sleepwalkers. "They can't feel," Kael explained, following her gaze. "The curse of silence doesn't steal their voices. It steals their ability to connect, to experience genuine emotion. They remember what love felt like, what joy was, but they can't access those feelings anymore. They're becoming empty shells. And if I can't find a cure soon..." His voice broke slightly, and Maya saw him clench his fists. "They'll fade entirely, becoming nothing more than echoes of who they once were." Maya's throat tightened as she watched a couple pass beneath them. They held hands, but there was no warmth in the gesture. It was mechanical, performed rather than felt. "How long do they have?" she whispered. Kael's violet eyes met hers, and she saw centuries of pain compressed into a single moment. Days, perhaps weeks. "And Maya, the curse is spreading beyond our realm. If it isn't stopped, it will consume every world, including yours. Every soul capable of love will become an empty shell." The Library of Echoes was unlike anything Maya had ever imagined. Towering shelves stretched impossibly high, filled with books that wrote themselves, their pages fluttering with words that appeared and vanished like breathing. In the center stood a crystalline podium, holding a single ancient tome, bound in what looked like midnight blue scales. Kael approached it with reverence, his fingers hovering over the cover without quite touching. "This is the Chronicle of the Soul Singers," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every woman of your bloodline for the past 1,000 years, their powers, their choices, their sacrifices." When he opened the book, Maya gasped. The pages showed not words, but moving images, scenes of women who looked remarkably like her, their voices creating visible waves of light and shadow. Some healed great wounds with their songs, others fought battles where their voices were weapons of devastating beauty. Maya leaned closer, her breath catching, as she recognized her grandmother in one of the visions. But Eleanor looked no older than Maya was now, standing in this very library beside a man with silver hair and kind eyes. "She was so young," Maya whispered. The image shifted, showing her grandmother weeping as she cradled a lifeless infant, her voice rising in a song of such pure grief that the very walls seemed to crack. Then another shift, Elena fleeing through a portal of shadow and starlight, one hand pressed to her belly, tears streaming down her face. "Your grandmother made the hardest choice a soul singer can make," Kael said gently. "She chose love over duty. The infant in that vision was your father, and she was told he would die if she stayed in our world. So she gave up her powers, her immortality, her very nature, to raise him in the human realm." His violet eyes found Maya's, and she saw understanding there. Not judgment, but deep empathy. She knew that someday her granddaughter would inherit what she had sacrificed. She spent her entire life preparing you, teaching you those songs, training your voice, even if she never told you why. Maya's legs felt weak as the full weight of her heritage crashed over her. Every lullaby, every folk song, every seemingly innocent melody her grandmother had taught her, it had all been preparation for this moment. "She knew I would have to choose between my life and an entire world," Maya said, her voice cracking. The book's pages fluttered to a new vision, Maya herself, but older, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes holding depths of power and sorrow. She was singing to a crowd of fae, her voice creating ribbons of pure light that seemed to heal the very air around them. But the vision Maya looked hollow, as if the power had consumed something essential inside her. The healing chamber was a cavern of living crystal, its walls pulsing with soft, rhythmic light like a massive heartbeat. 7 pools of water so clear it seemed like liquid air were arranged in a circle, each one reflecting not Maya's face, but her emotions, fear in one, determination in another, love, grief, hope, rage, and in the center, something she couldn't quite name. It looked like the moment just before dawn, full of potential and terror in equal measure. "This is where soul singers traditionally learned their craft," Kael explained, his voice echoing strangely in the crystalline space. "Each pool resonates with a different aspect of the heart. To heal others, you must first understand the full spectrum of what it means to feel." He moved to stand beside the pool, reflecting her fear, and Maya was startled to see her own terror reflected back multiplied. Not just her fear of her powers, but her fear of losing herself, of failing everyone who was counting on her, of becoming something inhuman. Maya approached the pool of grief and immediately understood why her grandmother's songs had always brought her such comfort. The reflection showed not just her sorrow over her brother's death, but layers upon layers of inherited pain. Every soul singer who had come before, every choice they'd made, every loss they'd endured. "We carry it all," she whispered, understanding flooding through her. "Every soul singer inherits not just the power, but the accumulated grief of everyone who came before." "Yes," Kael said softly, "but also their love, their strength, their hope. Watch." He gestured to the center pool, and Maya saw something that made her breath catch. The reflection showed her brother David, but not as she remembered him in those final dark months. This was David laughing, David protecting her from bullies, David teaching her to play guitar. And behind him, like echoes, were all the people every soul singer had ever loved and tried to save. Your power doesn't come from emptiness, Maya. It comes from the absolute fullness of feeling everything. Taking a deep breath that tasted of starlight and possibility, Maya began to sing. Not any song she'd learned, but something that rose from the deepest part of her soul, a melody that wove together every lullaby her grandmother had taught her, every song she'd ever used to comfort her patients, every wordless tune she'd hummed while missing her brother. As her voice rose, the pools began to glow, their reflections merging into a single, overwhelming vision of connection. Every soul touching every other soul. Pain shared and therefore diminished. Love multiplied by being witnessed. For the first time since David's death, Maya felt complete. The tranquility of Maya's first successful healing session was obliterated by a sound like breaking glass, mixed with thunder. The crystal chamber's walls reflected a new presence, blazing beautiful and utterly terrifying. Prince Aurelius of the Light Court materialized in a cascade of golden flames, his wings spread wide enough to cast shadows across the entire chamber. Where Kael was darkness given form, Aurelius was light weaponized, golden hair that moved like liquid sunlight, eyes like molten amber, and a smile that promised both pleasure and destruction. "How touching," Aurelius said, his voice like honey poured over shattered glass. "The little mortal playing with powers she couldn't possibly understand, while my dear Kael hides behind her skirts." His gaze fixed on Maya with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously naked and on fire. "Did he tell you what really caused the curse, little singer? Did he mention that it was his pathetic attempt to resurrect his dead sister that doomed both our courts?" Maya felt Kael go rigid beside her, shadows gathering around his form like armor. "Don't listen to him, Maya. Aurelius specializes in truths twisted until they become lies." But she could hear something in Kael's voice, guilt, maybe even shame, that made her heart clench with sudden uncertainty. The pools around them began to churn, reflecting not emotions now, but fragments of memory. A young woman with Kael's violet eyes lying motionless on an altar of black stone, Kael's hands glowing with desperate magic, and something going terribly, catastrophically wrong. "Oh, this is delicious," Aurelius laughed, noting Maya's expression. "He didn't tell you. Of course he didn't." The Prince of Light moved closer, his presence making the air itself shimmer with heat. "Kael Nightwhisper died in battle 3 years ago, protecting refugees from my father's army. Noble, heroic, all very tragic. But dear Kael couldn't accept that some deaths serve a purpose. So he delved into necromancy, tried to call her soul back from whatever peace she'd found." Maya watched the truth play out in the pools, Kael chanting in a language that hurt to hear, power flowing from him in waves of silver and black. And then the moment when everything went wrong. Instead of bringing Lyra back, the magic had created a void in the place where she should have been. A void that began consuming the ability to feel genuine connection, spreading like a plague through both the shadow and light courts. "You were trying to save her," Maya said quietly, understanding flooding through her voice. "And it all went wrong." "I can offer you something Kael never could," Aurelius said, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper that seemed to caress Maya's skin like warm silk. "Freedom from the burden of choosing. Let me take your power, absorb it into my own light, and I'll break this curse without requiring you to sacrifice your humanity." His golden eyes promised everything Maya had been afraid to want. A return to her normal life, her patients who needed her, her small apartment with its familiar comforts. Maya felt the seductive pull of his offer, but something deeper resisted. "What would happen to Kael's people if you absorbed my power?" she asked, though part of her was afraid of the answer. Aurelius's smile sharpened, becoming less beautiful and more predatory. "The Shadow Court would become part of mine. Their darkness would be illuminated, made pure." The way he said pure made Maya's skin crawl, and she saw Kael's hands clench into fists. "You mean enslaved," Kael said, his voice carrying the rumble of distant thunder. "Aurelius doesn't want to break the curse, he wants to use it. A population that can't feel genuine emotion is a population that can't rebel, can't question, can't choose anything but obedience." The shadows around him began to take shape, not threatening but protective, forming a barrier between Maya and the Prince of Light. But Aurelius laughed, the sound like bells made of sunshine and cruelty. "And what does the Lord of Shadows offer instead? A lifetime of feeling everyone's pain as your own, the slow erosion of your humanity as you pour your soul into healing wounds that will never fully close." He gestured, and the chamber filled with visions. Maya growing older rapidly as she used her powers, her hair turning white, her eyes becoming hollow with the weight of absorbed suffering. "Look at what happened to every soul singer before you. They burned themselves out trying to heal a world that can't be healed. Maya looked between them, Aurelius offering easy escape at the cost of enslaving an entire court, Kael offering, what exactly? The chance to destroy herself, saving people who might not even be grateful. There has to be another way, she said, her voice barely audible. Some path between surrendering my power and losing myself to it. But even as she spoke, she could feel the weight of generations of soul singers who had faced this same impossible choice. None of them had found a third option. The temperature in the crystal chamber dropped 20 degrees in an instant, and Maya's breath came out in visible puffs as a presence began to manifest. Unlike Kael's dramatic emergence from shadow or Aurelius's blazing entrance, this arrival felt gentle, inevitable, like morning mist rising from a lake. The silver fog coalesced into the form of a young woman with Kael's violet eyes and an expression of infinite sadness mixed with fierce determination. "Sister," Kael whispered, his voice breaking on the single word. Lyra Nightwhisper stood before them, translucent but undeniably present, her form flickering between solid and ethereal. She wore the same battle armor Maya had seen in the memory pools, but it was torn and blood-stained, a reminder of how she died. When she spoke, her voice carried the hollow beauty of wind through empty places. "I've been trying to reach you," Lyra said, her gaze moving between her brother and Maya. "Both of you. Kael, my beloved brother, you have to stop carrying the guilt. The curse wasn't caused by your attempt to resurrect me. It was caused by my refusal to stay dead when you called." Her form solidified slightly, and Maya could see tears on her cheeks that looked like liquid starlight. "I heard your grief, your desperate need for me to come back, and I tried to answer, but I was already moving on, already letting go, and the magic caught me between life and death." Maya felt her heart break for both siblings as she watched Kael's face crumble with the weight of revelation. But Lyra wasn't finished. She turned to Aurelius, and her expression hardened into something that could cut glass. "And you, Prince of False Light, have been feeding off the curse from the beginning. Every soul that loses the capacity for love becomes easier for you to control. You've been sabotaging every attempt at a cure because you want the emptiness to spread." Aurelius's beautiful mask finally slipped, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "So what if I have? Love makes people unpredictable, ungovernable. A realm where everyone feels only what I allow them to feel is a realm at peace." His golden light flared, but it no longer seemed warm. It was the harsh glare of a desert sun, beautiful but merciless. "There is another way," Lyra said, her voice growing stronger as she focused on Maya. "But it requires something that no soul singer has ever been willing to do. You must sing me fully into death. Help me complete the journey I started 3 years ago. Once I'm truly gone, the void that's causing the curse will close." But Maya, her eyes filled with ancient sorrow. "To sing a soul from between life into true death, you'll have to experience dying yourself. You'll walk the edge of the final darkness and somehow find your way back. No one knows if it's even possible." Kael stood frozen, his entire body trembling as if he were fighting some internal war. Maya could see the battle raging in his violet eyes, love for his sister warring with terror of losing her forever, duty to his people clashing with his growing feelings for Maya. "I can't," he whispered, the words barely audible. "Lyra, I can't let you go. Not really, not forever." His shadows writhed around him like living grief, and Maya felt her heart shatter at the raw pain in his voice. "You have to," Lyra said gently, moving closer to her brother. "Look around you, Kael. Look at what my half-existence is costing everyone. Our people are fading to empty shells. The curse is spreading to other realms. And now I'm asking this mortal woman to risk death itself because you and I can't let go of each other." She reached out as if to touch his face, but her translucent fingers passed through his skin like mist. "I'm not alive, brother. I'm not at peace. I'm something in between that shouldn't exist." Maya watched this exchange with tears streaming down her face, understanding on a visceral level what Kael was going through. "When my brother David died," she said softly, "I kept his room exactly the same for 2 years. I'd sit in there and talk to him every night, convinced I could feel him listening. I thought I was honoring his memory, but I was really just refusing to accept that he was gone." She looked at Kael with infinite compassion. "Sometimes loving someone means letting them be at peace, even when it destroys us." Aurelius, meanwhile, was backing toward the chamber's entrance, golden light gathering around him like a weapon. "This is all very touching," he snarled, his beautiful facade completely abandoned now. "But I won't let you destroy what I've spent years building. A realm of empty, obedient souls was just the beginning. I was going to spread this curse to every world, create an empire where I am the only source of meaning or purpose." His eyes fixed on Maya with murderous intent. "If you won't join me willingly, little singer, then you'll die with the rest of them." But before he could attack, something unexpected happened. The crystal pools around them began to sing, not with sound, but with visible vibrations of pure emotion. Maya realized that her tears, falling into the pool of grief, had activated something ancient. The chamber itself was responding to the authentic pain of people choosing love over selfishness, sacrifice over safety. Light began to emanate from the pools, but it was different from Aurelius's harsh glare. This was the gentle illumination of stars, of hope persisting in darkness. "I'll do it," Maya said, her voice steady despite her terror. "I'll sing Lyra into true death, and I'll take the risk of not coming back. But Kael, I need you to promise me something. If I don't survive this, if I get lost in the darkness between life and death, you have to let me go. You can't make the same mistake with me that you made with Lyra." Aurelius struck like a falling star, golden flames erupting from his hands with enough force to crack the crystal walls. But Maya was no longer just a confused mortal. She was a soul singer, awakening to her full power. Without conscious thought, she began to sing, and her voice created a barrier of pure sound that turned his flames aside like water flowing around stone. The melody that emerged was unlike anything she'd ever heard. It was the song of creation itself, the first note that separated light from darkness, life from void. Kael moved to stand beside her, his shadows not attacking Aurelius, but weaving around Maya's song like a protective embrace. She realized that this was what the ancient soul singers had always needed, not to bear the burden alone, but to have someone who understood darkness stand with them while they brought healing light. Together, their powers created something entirely new, not the harsh brightness of false hope or the crushing weight of despair, but the gentle twilight where healing actually happens. "You understand nothing!" Aurelius screamed, his perfect features twisted with rage and fear. "Love is weakness, connection is chaos. I was bringing order to the universe." He gathered power for a final, devastating attack, but Lyra stepped between them, her translucent form suddenly blazing with silver light. Maya realized that her song was already beginning to work, that Lyra was drawing strength from the very process of letting go. "Brother," Lyra said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who has made peace with death, "sing with them. Help Maya guide me home." And for the first time since his sister's death, Kael began to sing. Not the desperate songs of necromancy he'd used before, but a gentle lullaby of farewell. His voice, deep and rich as midnight, wove around Maya's soaring melody, creating harmonies that seemed to heal the air itself. The effect on Aurelius was immediate and terrible. As the curse began to lift, as his victims started to regain their capacity for genuine feeling, his stolen power began to fail. The golden flames flickered and died, his perfect beauty revealed as an illusion, and underneath was something withered and desperate, a being so afraid of being truly seen that he'd tried to make everyone else as empty as he felt inside. "I won't let you," he whispered, but his voice was broken now, human. I can't be alone again. I can't face what I really am. Maya felt a moment of unexpected compassion for him. Here was someone so damaged by his own inability to connect that he'd tried to eliminate connection itself from the world. "You don't have to be alone," she said, her song shifting to include him. "But you have to choose vulnerability over control. You have to let people see who you really are." Aurelius knelt among the crystal pools, his perfect facade cracked and bleeding real tears for the first time in centuries. "I remember," he whispered, his voice raw with rediscovered pain. "I remember what it felt like to love someone and lose them. I remember choosing power over grief, because grief hurt too much." Maya's song softened, including him in its healing embrace, and she saw the truth of him, not a monster, but a soul so wounded by loss that he'd tried to eliminate the possibility of feeling anything real ever again. But there was no time for his redemption now. Lyra was beginning to fade, her form becoming more translucent as Maya's song called to the part of her that had been ready to move on 3 years ago. "It's time, Maya," she said, her voice already growing distant. "You have to follow me to the threshold and sing me across. But remember, once you step into that space between life and death, your own mortality becomes negotiable. You might not find your way back." Maya looked at Kael one final time, memorizing the way the crystal light played across his pale features, the way his violet eyes held centuries of love and loss. "If I don't come back," she began, but he pressed a finger to her lips, shaking his head. "You will," he said with fierce certainty, "because you're stronger than any soul singer who came before. You're not just carrying their legacy, you're rewriting it." He kissed her then, soft and desperate, and she tasted starlight and promises on his lips. Taking Lyra's ethereal hand, Maya stepped forward into the space her song had created, and the world fell away. She found herself walking along a path that seemed to be made of crystallized music, each step creating harmonies that rang out into infinite darkness. Beside her, Lyra grew more solid, more present, as if approaching true death was making her more alive than she'd been in years. "I can see it," Lyra breathed, wonder filling her voice. "The place where souls go to rest. It's beautiful, Maya. It's everything I hoped it would be." But as they walked deeper into the threshold realm, Maya began to feel herself becoming less solid. Her body was starting to fade, her consciousness scattering like smoke. This was the price of guiding someone across. To truly understand death, she had to experience it. Maya felt herself unraveling note by note, memory by memory. First went her childhood fears, then her professional training, then her grief for David, all of it dissolving into the cosmic harmony that surrounded her. She understood now why no soul singer had ever attempted this. To guide someone through death, you had to become death, had to surrender your individual existence to the vast song of the universe itself. "Don't let go," she heard Lyra saying, though the words seemed to come from very far away. "Maya, you're losing yourself too quickly. Focus on something that anchors you to life." But what could anchor her when she was becoming pure song, pure energy, pure compassion without form? Her memories of her patience, her love for Kael, even her grief, all of it was beautiful, but not substantial enough to hold her together in this place where individual identity meant nothing. Then she heard it. Another voice joining hers in the vast harmony of the threshold. Kael's voice, deep and rich with centuries of shadow, singing not to call her back, but to give her strength to complete her task. He wasn't trying to save her from this choice. He was supporting her through it. And behind his voice, impossibly, she heard others. Aurelius, his voice cracked but genuine, as he finally chose vulnerability over control. The voices of Kael's people, as they felt their capacity for love returning. Even Marcus, her patient, somehow adding his newly healed voice to the cosmic chorus. "You're not alone in this," came David's voice, her dead brother speaking across the veil with love and pride. You never were. Every person you've helped heal, every song you've sung in service to others, we're all here with you. Maya felt herself stabilizing, not as Maya the individual, but as Maya the bridge, Maya the healer, Maya the connection between souls. With this newfound stability, she was able to complete her task. She sang Lyra forward into the beautiful light that awaited beyond the threshold, watched as Kael's sister finally found the peace she'd been seeking. As Lyra dissolved into starlight and gratitude, Maya felt the curse breaking, like chains snapping. Across all realms, hearts that had been empty began to fill again with the capacity for genuine feeling. But now came the hardest part. Finding her way back to her individual existence without losing the cosmic perspective she'd gained. She had become something larger than herself, and returning to the boundaries of a single identity felt like trying to pour the ocean into a teacup. Maya found herself caught between existing as everything and returning to being someone. The cosmic song still flowed through her, showing her the interconnectedness of all souls, but Kael's voice served as her lifeline, not pulling her back against her will, but offering her a path home if she chose to take it. "I can see you, Maya," he sang across dimensions. "You're not lost. You're just expanded. You can hold both, your individual self and your connection to everything else." Slowly, like dawn breaking over mountains, Maya began to remember who she was while retaining what she'd become. She was Maya Chen, music therapist from Portland. She was also the soul singer who had bridged life and death. She was a woman who missed her brother. She was also a cosmic force of healing who could feel the pulse of every heart across multiple realms. These identities didn't contradict each other. They completed each other. When she finally materialized back in the crystal chamber, she was changed, but recognizably herself. Her hair now held streaks of silver that moved like liquid moonlight. Her eyes reflected depths that hadn't existed before, and when she spoke, harmonics of other voices could be heard beneath her own, not controlling her but supporting her. She had become what every soul singer was meant to be, not a lone healer bearing impossible burdens, but a conduit for the collective compassion of all souls. Kael caught her as she swayed, solid and warm and wonderfully real. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw that he too had been transformed by the experience. His shadows were no longer defensive barriers. They had become gentle spaces where wounded souls could rest and heal. "The curse is broken," he said simply, but Maya could hear the wonder in his voice. Around them, the crystal chamber was filled with new light, as the pools reflected genuine emotions for the first time in years. Aurelius knelt nearby, no longer radiating false golden light, but glowing with something softer and more real, the illumination that comes from being truly seen and still accepted. "I felt it break inside me too," he said, his voice rough with unfamiliar emotions. "The emptiness I tried to impose on everyone else, it's gone. I remember what it feels like to hope." Maya looked at him with compassion, seeing not a former enemy, but another wounded soul learning to heal. But the greatest miracle was yet to come. As Maya's expanded awareness settled into her transformed body, she realized that her connection to the cosmic song hadn't been severed. It had been integrated. She could still feel the pulse of every realm, could sense where healing was needed, but now she had the power to help without sacrificing herself. She had become what her grandmother had always dreamed of, a soul singer who could heal worlds without losing her humanity. Maya and Kael emerged from the crystal chamber to find the shadow realm transformed. The haunting, hollow music that had filled the air was now rich with genuine emotion. In the streets below, Maya watched couples who had been going through the motions of love suddenly see each other truly for the first time in years, their reunions bringing tears to her eyes. Children who had been silent and withdrawn began to laugh and play. Even the architecture seemed more alive, as if the very stones had remembered what it meant to be built with love rather than mere function. "Look at them," Maya whispered, her voice filled with wonder and the harmonics of cosmic joy. Through her expanded awareness, she could feel each individual heart as it remembered how to feel fully. But more than that, she could sense the ripple effects spreading to other realms. The light court's harsh brightness softening into warm illumination, the winter court's cold beauty gaining genuine warmth, the autumn court's eternal melancholy lifting into bittersweet hope. Kael stood beside her, his shadows now dancing with playful rather than protective energy. "I never thought I'd see my people truly happy again," he said, his voice thick with emotion she could feel as clearly as her own. But when he looked at Maya, there was something new in his violet eyes. Not just love, but recognition. "You're different now. You're yourself, but you're also more." Maya nodded, understanding flooding through her. "I am more, but so are you. So is Aurelius. So is everyone whose heart just remembered how to feel fully." She gestured to the celebration below, where Fae, who had been strangers, were embracing like family, where music and laughter filled spaces that had been silent for years. "This is what we were always meant to be, not isolated individuals hoarding our emotions, but connected souls sharing everything." Aurelius joined them on the balcony, his transformation perhaps the most dramatic of all. Gone was the predatory beauty, the manipulative charm. In its place was someone who looked genuinely surprised by his own capacity for joy. "I want to help," he said simply. "I spent so long trying to control everyone else's ability to feel that I forgot how to feel myself. But now, I want to learn. I want to make amends." He looked at Maya with something approaching worship. "Would you teach me? Would you help me become someone worthy of the emotions I tried to steal?" Maya felt the cosmic song flowing through her, showing her infinite possibilities for healing, infinite ways to help souls find their way back to connection. She saw herself not as a traditional music therapist confined to one office, but as a bridge between worlds, helping beings across all realms remember their capacity for love. "I'll teach anyone who truly wants to learn," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who has walked between life and death and chosen to return. "But the real healing doesn't come from me. It comes from the choice each of us makes to be vulnerable, to connect, to risk being seen." As if summoned by her words, a shimmering portal opened beside them, revealing Maya's office back in Portland. Marcus was there, no longer the broken veteran, but someone whose eyes held the silver light of genuine peace, explaining to Maya's confused colleagues that Dr. Chen had been called away on an emergency. Maya realized she could step between worlds now, could serve as a healer in both the magical realms and her own dimension. Maya's new sanctuary was a place that shouldn't have been able to exist, a therapy space that existed in the overlap between her human world and the Fae realms, accessible to anyone whose heart was ready for genuine healing. The walls shifted between familiar earth-tone paint and living crystal. The windows showed views of Portland's skyline and the shadow realm's twisted spires simultaneously, and the air itself hummed with the harmonic frequencies that had become Maya's signature. "Tell me about the nightmares," Maya said to her current patient, a young Fae warrior whose ability to feel fear had been returning in overwhelming waves since the curse broke. Her voice carried not just professional compassion, but the cosmic understanding she'd gained at the threshold between life and death. As she spoke, her words created visible ripples in the air, not controlling the warrior's emotions, but creating a safe space where they could be fully felt and processed. Through her expanded awareness, Maya could sense Kael approaching through the shadow paths that connected their realms. He had become her partner in the truest sense, not just romantically, but as a fellow healer who understood that some wounds could only be addressed in darkness, in the spaces between heartbeats where the deepest truths lived. Together, they had developed new forms of therapy that integrated human psychology with Fae magic, creating healing modalities that worked for beings across all dimensions. When Kael materialized in the sanctuary, His presence brought with it the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the sound of distant thunder, but these were comforting now, protective rather than threatening. "How was the session with Aurelius?" Maya asked, finishing her notes on the warrior's progress. Kael's smile was soft, proud, and slightly amazed. He's learning to use his light magic for genuine illumination rather than illusion. Today, he helped a group of shadow-caught children who were afraid of the dark remember that shadows can be friends as well as hiding places. Maya felt a warm satisfaction flow through the cosmic song that was always present in her awareness now. Aurelius's transformation had been one of the most profound, from someone who had tried to eliminate authentic emotion to someone who was learning to be a guide for others struggling with vulnerability. His beauty was no longer a weapon, but a gift. His power no longer about control, but about creating safe spaces where others could shine. "The balance is holding," Maya said, referring not just to the emotional stability of the realms, but to her own internal equilibrium. She had found a way to be both Maya the individual and Maya the cosmic force, switching fluidly between her human identity and her expanded consciousness as the situation required. When she worked with human patients, who simply perceived her as having developed some remarkable new therapy techniques, she was Dr. Maya Chen. When she worked with Fae or traveled between dimensions, she was the soul singer. But increasingly, these identities were becoming one integrated whole. As the day's final patient left, a light-court noble learning to distinguish between genuine confidence and defensive arrogance, Maya and Kael stood together at the sanctuary's shifting windows, watching the sun set simultaneously over Portland and the Shadow Realm. "Do you ever miss it?" Kael asked quietly. "The simplicity of your old life?" Maya considered this, her enhanced empathy feeling the love and concern behind his question. "Sometimes I miss the illusion that my problems were small," she admitted, "but I could never go back to being unconscious of how connected we all are. Every time I help someone heal, whether they're a veteran with PTSD or a Fey Lord learning to grieve, I can feel how their healing ripples out to touch everyone they'll ever encounter." She leaned into Kael's embrace, solid and warm, and exactly as real as the cosmic song flowing through her awareness. "This is who I was always meant to be. I just needed to risk everything to find out." As if summoned by their contentment, a soft chime filled the sanctuary, Maya's appointment system alerting her to tomorrow's schedule. A mix of human and Fey clients, a consultation with the newly formed Inter-Realm Council on Emotional Wellness, and a session with a group of young soul singers from other worlds who were seeking training in the integrated approach Maya had developed. She had become not just a healer, but a teacher, showing others how to transform their deepest wounds into their greatest gifts. The last light of day, both Portland's sunset and the Shadow Realm's eternal twilight, filled the sanctuary with warm gold and soft purple, and Maya felt the cosmic song crescendo around them in a harmony of perfect contentment. She had found her true calling, her perfect love, and her authentic self, all in the same impossible journey. And in helping others do the same, she had discovered that healing the world and healing yourself weren't separate tasks. They were the same song, played in perfect harmony. 6 months later, in Portland, Dr. Maya Chen is featured in a psychology journal for her revolutionary new approach to trauma therapy that combines music with unprecedented empathic techniques. Her patients describe feeling truly heard for the first time. Maya smiles as she reads the article, knowing that some truths are too large for any single world to contain, but that love, in all its forms, always finds a way to bridge the gap between what we think we know and what we dare to hope.